company man. A Canadian, he grew up in Lethbridge, Alberta, and joined Nortel in 1969. Although he went to school for electrical engineering, his true talents were not in design. During his entire career at Nortel, he never made it onto a single patent. He was instead destined to climb the corporate ladder, and at just 35 years old, he became a general manager, the youngest person ever in that role. He'd break that record again when he became a VP. Next, he hopped on over to president of BNR, Nortel's beloved crown jewel, and later he pushed for Nortel to get into the wireless market. But his ascension up the corporate ladder was far from over, and by the end of the Paul Stern years, he was president of Nortel North America. By 95, with Jean Monty's remodeling well underway, Roth was made his heir apparent, taking on the role of COO for 2 years before finally getting to wear the big boy pants in 1997, with Monty heading upstairs to become CEO of Bell Canada Enterprises. The model Canadian CEO is like a Canadian Supreme Court justice. The average Canadian probably doesn't know your name. Certainly something that can't be said for their American counterparts. John Roth was no Bill Gates, and he wasn't a Steve Jobs. His first ever interview as CEO, he seemed deeply uncomfortable with the attention. He was boring. The business press was confounded by him. The Globe and Mail, unable to find something interesting to say about him, instead described his body as lanky and weird. Feels uncalled for. Some people compared him to the nebulous cigarette-smoking man from the TV show The X-Files. In other words, an enigma. He also had big shoes to fill. Monty had been named Canadian CEO of the Year in '97, after he turned the company around following the disastrous Paul Stern years. As you know from the intro, John Roth will win the same award, but the road he takes to get there is a little bit bumpier. Let us introduce the John Roth threshold. This is the stock price on the day he assumed the title of CEO. If he leaves the company above this line, he was a success. Let's see how he does. Just 2 months in, on December 3rd, 1997, John Roth sent out a now iconic email to all 74,000 employees of Nortel. It was entitled The Right Angle Turn. Nortel needed to pivot. If you asked him, John Roth could tell you the exact moment he realized the internet was the future. Like many millionaires, he's an avid car collector. One day, he was trying to find a replacement liner for the glove box of his 1966 Jaguar E-Type, but he couldn't find one in Canada. But as he says here, I started poking around and within 5 minutes, I'm in a little garage north of London. A 4-man operation, and he's got my parts. How would I have ever found this person if he wasn't on the web? Truly a man ahead of his time, he quickly got addicted to online shopping and bought a 1950s jukebox and a pool table. John Roth made it clear, Nortel was an internet company now. How they were going to do that was a serious question. This is a point of contention, and I've heard 2 sides to this. John Roth supposedly went to his technical people and asked them how long it would take to get a foothold into IP. He was told around 2 years, which was too slow for him. On the other hand, I've heard first-hand accounts that Nortel's engineers had a good grasp on IP and had even published some papers on it in their in-house journal. One of those papers even described a device extremely similar to the iPhone a whole decade ahead of time. There appears to be a disconnect. John Roth and the executives he surrounded himself with did not trust their own engineers, that they were dinosaurs who were stuck in their ways. This is perhaps the reason that Nortel made the controversial decision to shut down BNR. In 1996, BNR and its 17,000 employees was dissolved and absorbed into the rest of Nortel. The Bell Labs of Canada no longer existed. The name BNR, beloved by those who worked there, was erased unceremoniously. In the span of just 1 weekend, the corporate logo cops paid a visit to Ottawa and had removed every trace that the name BNR ever existed. For some longtime R&D folks, it felt like, quote, a dagger to the heart. Why BNR was dissolved is a bit of a mystery. It's possible it wasn't profitable on its own, viewed as a multi-billion-dollar sinkhole that couldn't exist in this new era that saw Bell downgraded from its long-distance monopoly. By some, BNR's culture was viewed as arrogant. They saw themselves as better than the rest, even down to their insistence that they use Macs instead of PCs. They needed to be reined in, brought into line with the same cost controls and accountability as the rest of the company. Executives began to place less emphasis on Nortel as a hardware company and more so as a software company that that specialized in networks. If John Roth needed R&D, he would have to find it elsewhere. And thus began the intense speculation of a merger. For months in 1998, there were rumors swirling in the business press that two of the big three may pair up. Any partnership that emerged would almost certainly be able to crush the odd one out. Nortel and Lucent would be massive. Complete domination in the telephone market, and their combined size could easily fund the R&D to catch up to Cisco in IP. A combo of Lucent and Cisco, or Nortel and Cisco, would be the perfect marriage of legacy telephone tech with cutting-edge IP technology. How far along any of these talks got is unclear. Lucent and Nortel had a huge product line overlap. Any merger would make huge sections of the new company redundant, and rumors of a merger between Lucent and Cisco caused the FTC to jump in and say, hey, we might block this because this is maybe a monopoly. There was also a fair amount of personal animosity between the three companies' CEOs that made any deal with Lucent highly unlikely. Richard McGinn, CEO of Lucent, had infamously hung up wanted posters of John Roth and John Chambers inside offices as a way to motivate his employees, a move that the other two found tasteless. Furthermore, Lucent had recently poached 3 top Nortel execs, and then they went on to sue Cisco over patent infringement. By this point, the only merger that made any sense was between Nortel and Cisco. And so in June 1998, John Roth makes an announcement that would forever change the trajectory of the entire industry. A decision that would set Nortel on the path to become the most valuable company in Canada. John Roth announces that he is buying the IP switching company Bay Networks for $9.1 billion. He's buying Cisco's biggest competitor. John Roth had set off a 3-way arms race.
Do you know that sound? Of course you do.
It's the high-speed wireless internet. It can reach all kinds of neat stuff. Oh, cool. Want to see live video of the accident?
No, thanks.
If you ask a dozen ex-Nortel employees what killed Nortel, I'm willing to bet a third of them would say Bay Networks. Not because it delivered the killing blow, but instead because it was the first of many increasingly bad decisions. It just took a while for everyone to realize the mistake. When Nortel acquired Bay Networks, it was anything but ordinary. It cost $9.1 billion, staggering for the time. Cisco had acquired around 5 companies in the years leading up to it, but each had a price tag that only ran into the millions. Bay was not a small company, and in fact had been the product of an earlier merger. They had around 7,000 employees, most of them in Silicon Valley, all of whom were immediately added to Nortel's workforce. Bay Networks was such a huge add that Nortel even got one last name change, becoming Nortel Networks. The company's CEO, Dave House, was immediately made Nortel's new president, right under John Roth. The two went on a worldwide press tour where they were seen by some as, quote, Batman and Robin. Yet despite all the fanfare, the purchase was greeted by the markets with a resounding thud. People honestly thought John Roth had blown it. Bay was way over the hill. Their product line had already matured too much, and they had way overpaid. During fall 1998, the stock price tanked, and many thought that John Roth would be out the door far sooner than expected. But then, Lucent blinked. See, Lucent had actually been one of Bay Networks' biggest customers. The Nortel purchase had completely locked them out of the IP space, and management began to panic. And so in January 1999, Lucent buys Ascend Communications, the next biggest company comparable to Bay Networks. Except they paid a much steeper price than Nortel did. A whopping $20 billion. If people thought Nortel had overpaid, then Lucent got fleeced. Ascend had been doing so poorly, brokers jokingly called it ass end. Following this example, Cisco, which had already been buying companies at a frantic pace, went into absolute Pac-Man mode and gobbled up 18 companies in just 1999. The next year, Cisco's grand total would stand at 64 acquired companies. And Lucent was no slouch either. Bingo, bango, bongo. John Roth had every reason to be smug, and he took a shot at Cisco, saying, "We can learn to spell IP faster than Cisco can learn to spell reliable." Look, you gotta hand it to the man. He's got sick burns.
So you're happy with the Bay purchase?
Absolutely.
And you feel you paid the right price?
Well, it looks like a bargain now in retrospect compared to some of the other deals that are going down.
Okay.
Feeling vindicated now, John Roth had permission from Nortel's board to go on a shopping spree. Between the years of 1999 and 2000, Nortel bought a new company at an average rate of 1 per month. Some were small firms with just one exciting R&D project. Others were well-established industry names. Bay Networks would remain their most expensive purchase, but more than a few of them crossed over the billion-dollar threshold. Altium Web Systems was grabbed for almost $6 billion, yet another big player in the Ethernet and IP space. Kairos went for $3 billion. With just 90 employees, they were developing a cutting-edge technology that would enable optical switching using tiny microscopic mirrors. This shopping spree was indiscriminate, and at times appeared to lack a clear focus. One of Nortel's other major purchases was Clarify, an e-commerce firm acquired for $2.1 billion. Exactly why John Roth wanted to take his telecom firm into the world of customer relations software is unclear. Frankly, some of these purchases were made entirely so that Lucent and Cisco couldn't have them. With every new acquisition came hundreds and in some cases